Straight talk from Israel. You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.
Well, today we're going to be talking about a few different things. One about who does this land really belong to. I'm going to give you an example of a news story that took place where a father and his children were almost murdered by Arab terrorists, Arab thugs that live here in Israel. And we're going to be talking also about the CCP, or the Chinese Communist Party. They've now been in power for 100 years with 100 million dead under that power. What is going to be next? People are talking about a coming war. What's that all about? We're going to be talking about all of these things on the show today, and how it will affect you, or how it could affect you, I should say. I want to remind you, if I have the time, about the story of King Solomon. It's a famous story showing his wisdom. Let me just read this quickly from Wikipedia. It's in the Book of Kings, chapter 3, and it recounts how two mothers living in the same house, each of the mothers had an infant son, and they came to Solomon. One of the babies had been smothered or died, and each claimed the remaining boy as her own. Calling for a sword, King Solomon declared his judgment. The baby would be cut in two, each woman to receive half of the baby. One mother did not consent to this ruling, declaring that if she could not have the baby, one of the mothers did not say no. She said, okay, if... it sounds fair to me. While the other mother said, no, please don't kill the baby. Just give it to her. Just don't kill him. And King Solomon said, you are the real mother, because the real mother would never harm her child. And the woman that was saying, that's fine with me, cut him in half, she could not have been the real mother. And we know this about the land of Israel as well. And I'm going to be sharing with you a news story that coincides perfectly with this story. And then we're going to be talking about the CCP, and we're going to be talking about how it may affect us, their history, and where they're going now in the future, and a possible coming war. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
The return of the Jewish people to the land of Israel was prophesied in the Bible thousands of years ago and is coming true today. Shalom. Join me, Josh Wander, on Israel Unplugged. Listen in as we delve into the spiritual and physical aspects of the Jewish return to Zion. We'll discuss the biblically mandated, historic, and of course practical understandings of this incredible transition from exile to redemption. That's Israel Unplugged, every Monday on IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com.
All right, we're back here at the Tamar Yonah Show on IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com. And I want to read you a news article. I'm reading from Arutz Sheva, IsraelNationalNews.com. And it was a headline of several hours ago. This is Sunday, by the way. If you're listening to this show on another day, it's a replay, but we are live this Sunday afternoon here in Israel. It says here, a father says, Arab thugs tried to burn me alive with my children. It says here, they've tried to kill me a few times in the past, but they never tried to burn me alive together with my children. Mayor Rubin, a father of two and the executive director of the Kohelet Forum, said, quote, we're all fine, but nothing else here is fine. Recalling Friday's events at the Aminadav Forest, Rubin continued, quote, I left on Friday night to go hiking with my 3-year-old and 6-year-old sons, including sleeping in a tent. We started off with a picnic with friends, during which I noticed an arson in the forest about 200 meters away. A meter is around a yard. I called the police and the firefighters. I ran towards the site of the arson to try to catch the arsonists. They had already left, so I ran back towards the main exit from the reserve, and I photographed the vehicle with the two youths, which was racing wildly towards the exit. They saw that I had photographed them, and they braked next to me in the car and were about to exit the vehicle when they noticed that I was armed. And after a few screams, they continued driving at top speed. Reuben continued, quote, "The firefighters arrived, they extinguished the flames, and continued on. The police also contacted us, received the photographs of the suspects and the vehicle they were in, including the license number. My wife returned home with our youngest. The friends left, and the kids and I remained in the forest. I put the children to sleep in the tent, but I didn't feel comfortable, and I remained awake outside the tent. Around 11 o'clock at night, I heard noise a few meters from us, and suddenly the entire forest around me started to burn. I threw the kids half asleep at the nearest clearing. I called the police and through them the firefighters, and then I took the kids to the car to get away from the fire. I strapped them both into their safety seats, and suddenly 2 vehicles appeared, a long Savannah and another vehicle, and they blocked me. For a moment, I thought that maybe the Savannah is a police vehicle. But when 3 thugs got out of the vehicles and began cursing me in Arabic, I understood that this was an attempted murder of a kind that we've become used to recently, lynching Jews because they are Jews. Maybe because I attempted to start a Torah seed group in the forest. Between us, if I was alone, I would have run into the forest and waited for the police. Why risk losing my weapons license, being injured, interrogations, a criminal case, and maybe all of those together if I can anyway run a lot faster than them? A new car will cost less than a good lawyer. So what he's saying here, folks, is that in Israel, it's become a sarcastic joke that if you use your gun, even to protect yourself, once you fire your gun, or sometimes even just pull it out of its holster and point it at your attacker, the police will come and confiscate the gun from you and maybe even charge you as well. And so the joke is that guns in Israel are what's called chad pa'ami. They're like paper plates. You use it once and then that's it. It's done its use. And that's the joke here, that if you use your gun once, if you shoot once, your gun's going to be confiscated from you. So he continues here and says that, but my kids were strapped into the car and the terrorists were blocking my path very, very well. I can see by this English that this is translated from the Hebrew. I went back today to a place where I interrogated myself. In other words, I went over what happened. My car is parked here exactly next to the wall and the tree. The Savannah is opposite it, and behold, it is the smaller vehicle. I couldn't get out no matter what. So I put my hand on the gun and I yelled at them to stop. Now he's telling the story of what happened. The 3 of them continued advancing towards me. I pulled out my gun a bit and I yelled again. They ran towards me even faster and were just a few meters away from me. I pulled out my gun and aimed it at the ground. I put my hand on the cocking handle and I yelled at them, "Get out of here right now. The police are on their way." My magazine, that goes in the gun, was fitted with 2 regular bullets and a dum-dum in order to ensure stoppage. I already figured a bullet to the center of the body to my right, to the legs of the second one, a dum-dum bullet to the third that was already on me, and then another one to the right if necessary. But it seemed that they understood that I was able to shoot, and they returned to their vehicles, and they attempted to block my exit out. Luckily, I understood that this was their intention, and I was already in the vehicle a second after them. My car is a 4x4, despite the fact that it looks like a regular family vehicle. So I drove on the margins of the lane a lot faster than they could have expected, and I passed them a second before they blocked the road. I raced around the bends of the road. The kids in the backseat were asking what happened, and the 2 vehicles were doing everything possible to get me off the road. Whoever knows the steep drive towards Jerusalem will understand how easy it is to conduct a maneuver like this, to try to throw someone off the road. Remember, Jerusalem is in the mountains, and so there are a lot of cliffs and a lot of roads where you can fall off the mountain. I managed to remain ahead of them, and at the main entrance to Aminadav, the police, that's the community, the police car I had called 10 minutes prior to, when I was near the tent, let me a pass. I'm sorry, but this is how they translated this from Hebrew, and managed to block them from following me. The police officers took my gun and the keys to my vehicle. They interrogated me over and over regarding what exactly had happened and assured that the gun had in fact not been used. In other words, he didn't shoot from his gun, and no bullets were missing. And after one of the terrorists ran towards me, cursing, they gave me back the gun and my keys and told me to run home immediately before they let the Arabs go as well. Yes, you read right. They apparently let the Arabs or let these terrorists go home at the scene. I'm not sure, though, because I did what the police suggested and I brought my kids home. Reuben concluded, so I had luck training and appropriate equipment, and I wasn't even in a place considered dangerous. And still, a small change in what happened and the entire incident could have ended in a horrific disaster. As a society, we must not make peace with terror. Terrorists want to terrorize, to prevent routine. In other words, normal life. All terror that causes people to change their behavior is essentially victorious, and we must not let the terror win in any place at any time. And the article goes on. I don't know if I have enough time here, but I do want to say here that it's interesting that the ones that set fire to the land destroy crops, destroy orchards. That, you know, if they destroy, let's say, wheat fields or something like that, it's bad. There's going to be a wheat shortage possibly and bread shortage, etc. But to destroy and set fire to orchards that take 7-8 years for these trees to really mature and start giving forth, it shows their disgust and disdain for the land of Israel. It shows, to me at least, a Bible-believing person that this is not their baby. This land does not belong to them, because a baby or your land you would not destroy. I don't care if it's for political reasons or not. You don't do things like this. And by the way, they haven't just destroyed fields and orchards, but homes have gone up, businesses have gone up, factories have gone up, hot houses have gone up in flames. It's destruction because of their disdain, because just like the mother said, if I can't have my child, then the other mother's not going to have hers either. And she admits that it is her child, the other mother's child. And this is our land. The Jews don't go doing things like setting our land on fire and doing terrorist acts and blocking the roads from Arabs and trying to come and lynch them. This is a lesson that we need to really internalize when we see the viciousness The lack of shared values for life, for family, for the land. And one cannot live in a country with people who live there who are doing this to them. Could you imagine if there was a group of people in the United States who were setting fires to your farmlands? How would you live with that? All right, when we get back, we're going to be talking about some more unfortunate things going on in the world with China. We'll be right back.
Hi, everyone. This is Andrea Siminto from Jerusalem, inviting you to drop everything and join me on my show, Pull Up a Chair. We'll visit this week's quirky stories, meet fabulous guests, and discover my Israel. Together, we'll laugh, shout, and explain the topics that make us say, hey, we've got to talk about that. So get comfortable and pull up a chair with me, Andrea Siminto, every Thursday on Israel News Talk Radio.
All right, we're back here at the Tamar Yonah Show on IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com. And it is 100 years now since the beginning of the Chinese Communist Party. And during those 100 years, we have seen, unfortunately, and extremely sadly and devastatingly, 100 million perhaps dead. So what's next? In the news, they're now talking about the possibility of the Chinese Communist government going in to invade Taiwan. Taiwan, of course, will not stand for this, and so we are looking at a possible war. And how will that affect us in the world as well? Here to talk to us about that, we have joining us Dr. Mordechai Ben-Menachem. He's a researcher, former lecturer at Ben-Gurion University, and has authored over 80 books and 400 research papers on science, history, and more. He commentates on Mideast and world issues. Welcome to the show, Dr. Mordechai Ben-Menachem.
Thank you.
All right. How much of a chance do you think it's going to happen that China may invade Taiwan and go to war?
Let me sort of rephrase that slightly. I definitely believe that the Chinese Communist Party wants to unite Taiwan with China, but they have never said that they wish to unite the Taiwanese with China.
Which means that you're saying that there's going to be like another, tens of millions dead?
Yes.
Oh, my gosh.
What I believe is going to happen is the following. Let's take a step back for a moment before I actually answer that question. What we see throughout the entire Western world, everybody is talking about this 1 hour speech made by Xi Jinping in Tiananmen Square about how he talked about how no one will ever again bully China, and everybody's saying, oh, but nobody's bullying China. China's being the bully. One of the major problems, one of the major intercultural problems in the history of the world, it's a human problem. It's not a problem by any specific group. Is that people, what can you do, tend to be more or less arrogant towards their own culture and forget that when they're looking at another culture, they need to look at that other culture and not look down at that other culture through their culture. So everybody's saying, well, China's not being bullied. Westerners don't have a sense of history. Anything that happened before they were born didn't happen. China still remembers, and I'm going to say something, probably the only thing I'm going to say positive about China. I'm going to say something nice or positive about Chinese. China really does remember. The Chinese people really do remember, and I've spoken to many Chinese people about this, that in the 19th century, the British, for instance, weaponized opium and used it to murder 12 million Chinese. Yes, the China government, the China nation, the Chinese people are deeply insulted by the West and by its former humiliation of the Chinese culture and the Chinese people. And they remain just as insulted and just as hurt as they were 100 years ago. And so when you're looking at China and not recognizing that China has a culture of its own, then you're simply speaking through your hat and not through your head. But let me try to sort of answer your question, because it's a very important question. So the admiral who is the head of the U.S. Military forces in the Indo-Pacific region recently testified that he believes that China will attempt to take over Taiwan sometime within the coming 6 years. I don't know exactly how he came up with that number. That's not important right now. The important thing is that he's talking about a very small time frame, a time frame which, generally speaking, would be within the term of office of a single American president, a single American administration. But if we look at the 100 years of the rule of the since the formation of the Chinese Communist Party, and slightly less than that of the rule of the Chinese Communist Party. Remember, they only began to rule China in 1949, though the party was formed in 1921. Since the Chinese Communist Party has been ruling China, as you mentioned, we have seen something on the order of, and no one knows exactly, of course, something on the order of 100 million Chinese dead people. That's a horrible number. That's more than Hitler and Stalin put together. If we look at, for instance, in 1950, they conquered Tibet, and they have basically genocided the Tibetan people and the Tibetan culture. They've conquered Mongolia, and they're basically in the process of genociding the people of Inner Mongolia. Mongolia is divided into two parts, the part conquered by China and the part that is an actual free nation of its own. Everybody knows about what they're doing with the Uyghurs in the western part of China, where over 1 million Uyghurs are imprisoned. Everyone knows about the issues of freedom of religion in China, where they are harvesting, it's a horrible word, harvesting organs from live people, both Uyghurs and other religious dissidents. Again, dissidents in double quotation marks, because they actually aren't. Many of these people, their basic religion is just to live in peace. That's the name of their religion, the Falun Gong. They really don't have much in terms of beliefs in the Western sense. Their belief system is
they're
how
not a
to live
warring
in peace
culture.
with your neighbors.
Yeah, they're not a warring culture.
Very, very much not a warring culture. But the Chinese government, for some reason that I have never been able to figure out, it's basically destroying them in every human manner, including, as I said, harvesting of organs and selling these organs to people who are in need of organs around the world.
Yeah. I'd like to preface it when we say Chinese government with the communist Chinese government, because I'm sure there are millions and millions of Chinese who are totally against this and are victims themselves. But go ahead.
I will agree with that, but with the proviso that of what I said in the beginning, that the Chinese people, whether they're communists or not, are deeply insulted by the past actions of the West and the Western culture. And that is a very important point. So I agree with you completely that the vast majority of Chinese people are basically fine and lovely people. I've met probably hundreds of them, and every one of them has been a really lovely person to deal with. But even the most sociable people and intelligent people in China will still admit, when you ask them, having been insulted by the past actions of the West. And that matters in terms of how these things are viewed. Because if anybody believes that the Chinese people will tomorrow rise up and overthrow the Chinese Communist Party, that may happen at some time, but it's certainly not going to happen quickly. And that's very, very important to realize.
Okay, so in the last 2 minutes that we have in this segment, how does that affect the rest of us? I mean, a lot of people might be yawning now. Who cares what happens in China?
I don't think anybody is yawning about who cares what happens in China. China is the most populous country in the world, 1.4 billion people. Though India is very close to passing them right now. It's still, even if India does pass them within the next coming 5 years, as is predicted, it's still an enormous country in size, in material resources, in natural resources, in population, in every measurement. And it's a very rich country, and it's a very powerful country. So what China does affects everyone in the world all the time. Now that doesn't mean that there's nothing that can be done about any of this. There's quite a bit that can be done, and China can be easily in double quotation marks, easily thwarted with a lot of the things that they're doing. But nobody so far has shown the courage to be able to do that, other than Donald Trump, who of course is no longer in a position where he can do anything about it. The Chinese government was very much afraid of Donald Trump. They are not afraid of either the cackler in chief or the bumbling fool, and that's very, very important. So your original question was: is China going to invade Taiwan? I believe that China is preparing to invade Taiwan, but my belief is that they will not do it in such a manner that Australia, Japan, India, and the United States can protect Taiwan. They will annihilate the people and then move in. That is my personal belief.
And how do you think that they're going to annihilate them?
How? The Taiwanese.
How?
And only then take over the land.
How will they do it? So many people so quickly before news agencies start screaming around the world and showing the atrocities.
You can do that very quickly. That's not a problem. You can send over poison gas. You can send over. It's an island.
But that's a war crime. But that's a war crime.
Sorry.
But that's a war crime to send over poison gas.
Who cares?
Will the world stand for it? They might. I mean, they've stood for it for when the Jews were being gassed. But I'm just wondering.
The world has stood so far for 70 years with China genociding the Tibetans. They've stood for a decade and a half.
Okay.
Genociding the Uyghurs. They've stood for a decade.
Hold it right there. We're going off the air. We'll be right back.
Genociding the Mongolians.
Are you interested in transforming your life, drawing closer to the Creator, and uncovering the deeper meanings and hidden treasures in the Hebrew Bible?
Then join me, Rav Yitzhak Michelson,
And me, William Hall,
on the Science of Kabbalah, where we are seeking to narrow the gap between what we understand of our physical and spiritual worlds. So make sure to tune in every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Israel time, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, here on Israel News Talk Radio.
Hello, I am Walter Bingham. If you want to hear the news behind the news and the true perspective on world affairs, then the Walter Bingham File is the program for you. We bring you interviews with the movers and shakers, political commentaries, and on-the-spot reports of events as they happen. All here every Tuesday, 4 p.m. Israel time, 9 a.m. Eastern time. And it's all archived on our website. Make it a date.
All right, we are back here at the Tamar Yonah Show on IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com. And the topic we're talking about today is the Chinese Communist Party. The communists, wherever they are, whatever country they're in, they are dangerous for their own citizens and, of course, for the world. Life is not valued by them like it is by other people who are not communists, who don't believe that the government is all. And we're speaking with Dr. Mordechai Ben-Menachem. And in the last segment, we were talking about how China is making moves on Taiwan. And in the last segment, Mordechai, you were saying that they would, before they would take over Taiwan, if they do make this move, they would probably kill them first. And you're saying they would do it in a quick an easy way, which by the world would be considered war crimes, but you're saying that doesn't really matter because the world probably won't stand up to China about it anyway. And my following question is, what would happen then? What would happen if Taiwan was swallowed up by the communists in China? And how would that affect the rest of the world? And what about all those people who supposedly are killed before they came in?
Well, the first issue is geography. There's a off the coast of the eastern coast of Asia. There's a line of islands. Taiwan, Philippines, Japan make up a line of islands, and a bunch of others as well. I'm not discussing at the moment. And this is called the first island chain. And basically, China's navy cannot break out towards the west coast of the United States without going through this island chain. At the present time, they do not have a way of doing that, and therefore, as far as China is concerned, geostrategically, they need to take Taiwan in order to be able to threaten the United States. That's critical for their long-term plans of domination. They must be able to break out of the first island chain, and that means they must have Taiwan. It's absolutely critical for them to do so. So I believe that they will do so eventually, or they will try to do so eventually. And as I said, since their perception is that the world has done nothing about prior genocides that they've done, the world will do nothing about genocide in Taiwan either.
All right. And then how does it affect the rest of us? I mean, that's what people want to, bottom line. How am I going to suffer by that? That's what they're asking.
The bottom line splits into two. On the one hand, once they do something like that, they can break out. In other words, they can break out towards the Pacific region. But there's a balancing force to that, and that's very important for people to understand. More than 80% of Chinese...
Yes? Mordechai, did we lose you? I think we lost Mordechai. We're going to try to get him back. We're speaking to... Now I hear you. Now I hear you. Go ahead. Mordechai? Okay, we're trying to get Mordechai back again. Mordechai, talk if you're there. Mordechai Ben-Menachem is our guest today on the show, and we seem to have a faulty connection here. Mordechai, if you're there, just start talking. Okay, so we're trying to get Mordechai back. And we're talking about the CCP, the Communist Chinese Party. I want to repeat again that the communists do not share the values of faith and family. Faith and family are enemies to communists. And so they have to kill God, and then the government becomes the ultimate. So if the government, which they will market as we, the people, are going to decide. It's like the Tower of Babel, where the people are going to reach heaven, dethrone God, take God's throne, so to speak, and we, mankind, will become the masters of our own destiny. And we don't need God making us crazy, and we don't need God telling us what to do. We're going to decide what to do. And so this is a danger, because when you don't have morality and God's wisdom, you're going to end up with 100 million dead or more. All right, we do have a caller. Let's go to Larry from the occupied territories of Kansas. Hi there, Larry. What's your comment or question?
Well, I'm a poor replacement for Mordecai. who was just on, your guest. But anyway, I'll try. One of the things to look really far into the future would be that if we have a war with China, you know that we will rearm Japan with nuclear weapons and try to let them do the dirty work before it gets to our shores. Japan would be very happy to do it, and no matter how it turned out, we would still have a nuclear Japan and a very upset China to deal with. Bad situation. And one comment about Taiwan, it used to be known as Formosa when we were growing up because Japan claims it. And China now has never, ever even accidentally admitted that it's a separate country. They consider it a rogue state, and they consider it theirs. It wouldn't be a matter of reuniting. It would be a matter of just taking it back and putting them in their place. And the question I have is, since it's 100 years since the Communist Party started in China, basically, do they give credit to Karl Marx, who started the whole thing in the beginning? Do they give him any credit during their celebrations? Or do they just give it all to Mao Zedong and Lin Piao and that bunch?
I would imagine the latter, but I don't know. But I'm wondering if it's even important. But I have a question for you, Larry, because I'm really curious. Do you think, with all that we've heard about Biden's connections with China and the wheeling and dealing that he does there, that is to China's benefit, but maybe I don't know, to the benefit of the Biden family as well and other power elites there, that maybe they would tacitly allow this to go on and they would make some deal. You know, I mean, Europe was going to do that with Czechoslovakia. Okay, you know what? We'll let Hitler have Czechoslovakia, but you give us this, because they don't. Do they really care about the Taiwanese? No, they don't. They don't care.
No, they don't. And the Taiwanese, the Chinese who moved in there, they subjugated an indigenous people when they moved in 48, whenever it was. There was a group of people there, actually people from that island, who were just a little bit separate from the Chinese, even physically. They're gone. Nobody's talking about them. And yes, the Chinese have used the Biden family, and they consider him an investment. He's easy, and they will turn on him in a hot minute if they need to. And they don't consider him anything but weak. And that first meeting we had with them in Alaska, when they just stood there and just humiliated us from start to finish, and we sat there and took it, somebody should have gone over to the Chinese side of the room and pushed the table over on the floor. It spilled all their water. And that would have been a better message for them, because they're going by that now. They see Biden and Kamala Harris and that whole gang as a green light to do whatever they want. And you can expect them to do just exactly that. And it will happen while the Democrats are in office. The closer Trump gets to being reelected, or a Republican, the less likely we will have any trouble with China in the near future. My opinion.
Right. No, I agree, because the left that has risen up in the United States is tilting towards communism. And so it would seem to me that they would be very amiable and look at each other as even allies to destroy this evil capitalism and the evil colonialists, et cetera, that they're trying to make out.
And as far as the opium wars in China, which England certainly did do, for their own benefit, and it killed a lot of Chinese people and addicted them and ruined them. We gave up enough men in World War II fighting the Japanese, who were the real, true enemies of China. They are the enemies that just aren't economic. They consider Chinese people barbarians. And in the 1930s, when they were in China, ganging up people and huddling them in little groups and throwing gasoline on them and burning them and taking pictures while they did it. We have never done anything like that, and neither did England as far as that goes. Japan is the unknown quantity in this country, that we don't realize the relationship between China and Japan. And one other thing, Chinese people, as opposed to the party, are wonderful, beautiful people, highly civilized in most ways. And don't try to judge our relationship with Red China with your favorite Chinese restaurant and the people who own it that are so friendly and nice to you. That's not the way to do it. That's nice.
That's why I wanted to say preface the Chinese with the communist Chinese government.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
There's a big
but
distinction
the Chinese
there.
people, and not the Chinese party, have always been the people who, if a baby is born in the family with a slight deformity, like ears that are wrong or a cleft palate or something. The oldest male in the family just picks it up on a Saturday night and carries it in town and puts it behind his favorite restaurant near the dumpster at the back of the restaurant. So their culture is not to be, judged by our values. East is east, west is west.
Larry, I got to say goodbye. I have to say goodbye because we do have Mordechai back on the line with us, but we're ending the show now. So I want to thank you for your call, Larry. And Mordechai Ben-Menachem, in the last 10 seconds.
Last 10 seconds. Huh? Sorry?
Yeah, last 10 seconds. Leave us with something. One sentence.
Okay, all I can say is that anybody who's interested in how China can be thwarted should look at the Malacca Straits. And India can do it if they have the courage to do so.
All right, so India's in the picture now, too, and I think the whole world needs to be in the picture. Thank you so much for being with us, Dr. Mordechai Ben-Menachem. I urge everybody to do your own research as well to be informed on what is going on. We are here to help. Thank you, everybody, for being with us. Thank you, Dr. Mordechai Ben-Menachem.
Thank you.
If you love Israel News Talk Radio, then you'll love our Facebook page. We keep you up to date on what's happening in Israel, plus little surprise treasures that we don't share on the radio. Go now to follow us on Facebook. Just look for the Israel News Talk Radio Facebook page, and don't forget to subscribe and follow us by clicking on the like button. We post great stuff there that you'll want to share. Israel News Talk Radio on Facebook and Israel News Radio on Twitter.
If you're hearing this message, everyone else can too. Advertise with Israel News Talk Radio and get your message out to people. We'll build a personalized package for you. Contact advertising at israelnewstalkradio.com.
Straight talk from Israel. You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.
Hey, this is Jake in Anchorage, Alaska, and I love listening to all the super interesting interviews and up-to-date information on what's happening in Israel.
Hello, this is Anna King, originally from London, now living in Israel. And what can I say? Israel News Talk Radio is my cup of tea.
My name is Bhaskar. I'm from India, and I love listening because you get to know the truth and wonderful voices from this lovely country.
Mom! Okay, wait a minute. Hi, this is Chava Dax, and I'm calling from the rolling hills of Ma'ale Adumim, just north of Jerusalem. I always listen to Israel News Talk Radio to get all the latest news and commentary and to keep me up to date every day.
This is Sarah Dax from Ma'ale Adumim, and I'm 12. I wish Israel News Talk Radio was boring so my mom wouldn't listen to it all the time. Mom!
You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.
News, opinion, and more. You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.